So I'm sitting here last night, as usual, trying to finalize my notes and the outline so I know what I'm talking about. I'm pulling questions for the mailbag at the end of the show. People think I wake up on Sunday, I just hook up the microphone, and I just start talking. It don't work like that. It does not work. It's 7 days a week. 7 days, especially now with this history segment. 7 days a week. So I'm trying to put the finishing touches for this week's show. I'm like, man, there's really no big top story this week. Obviously, we're going to get into the Impact hard to kill stuff here in a second. So I'm trying to wrap everything up. And all of a sudden, WWE decides that this would be a great time during the NFL games last night to announce when and where the next 3 WrestleManias are going to be taking place. They dropped this big announcement unannounced last night, which is smart, I guess, to do it during the games. They even put together a fancy little skit. It was like a parody of a newscast. Triple H and Stephanie were the anchors. Not going by those names. Triple H had an awful wig, pair of glasses on. Triple H was going by the name Henry E. Pankey. Of course, Hank is short for Henry. So he was Hanky Panky. And his wife was Anita Realman. Yep. It also featured Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman. Sasha Banks, she was one of the correspondents on location in Texas, doing her best Southern accent, going by the name Haley Mary. What a missed opportunity. She should have been kayfabe. Triple H could have said, let's go to our correspondent, kayfabe, standing by in Dallas. And then the main event correspondent was Hugh Can't See Me, which was John Cena, who is noticeably smaller. This is Hollywood John Cena. See, John Cena doesn't have to be as physically big as he used to be. Plus, he's getting older. I mean, he's in his early 40s now. Hasn't wrestled a traditional match in probably over a year and a half. Would it have been the match with Roman Reigns? Probably would have been. It probably would have been the match with Roman Reigns at No Mercy. And nah, he had to have wrestled after that. I'm sure I'm missing one. Because that match, I think, was 2017. So he had the match with Undertaker. That's right. WrestleMania 34, which wasn't much of a match. I mean, that was about 3 minutes long. So it's been a while since John Cena has had a real wrestling match. Still in incredible shape, I'm sure, don't get me wrong. But definitely noticeably smaller than the last time we saw him. But anyway, here's the announcement. The announcement is that WrestleMania 37 this year is being delayed. Now, they didn't say this, but the original planned date was March 28th. So that's when WrestleMania this year was going to be. It has been delayed by 2 weeks. And it will once again be a 2-night event, back-to-back nights, Saturday, April 10th, and Sunday, April 11th. And it will not be emanating from SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. Instead, it will be held at what was supposed to be last year's location, Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, Florida. So, yet another WWE show in Florida. They're not leaving the state of Florida. Basically, that's the bigger news. WWE, basically Florida is their new. People used to say, oh, I'm going to go to New York. And that was kind of like, that meant WWE. Now you don't say New York, you just say Florida. Because everything is down there, right? The Performance Center is down there. The Thunderdome is down there. WrestleMania is going to be down there. Everything is down in Florida. Vince McMahon has a home in Boca. AEW is down there. Jim Ross just moved down there, bought some beachfront property for himself. Everything is all based in Florida. If Bugs Bunny really did saw off that part of the United States and it went floating on into the ocean, we would lose that. Pretty much wrestling would die, because everything wrestling based is pretty much, with the exception, I guess, of Impact and Ring of Honor, based out of Florida these days. But that is the plan. They are going to do it from Tampa at Raymond James Stadium. Before COVID changed everything, that was going to be where WrestleMania 36 was to be held. So they get to reuse the pirate logo and the whole pirate theme. I'm sure they must have spent millions of dollars on some kind of pirate-themed set. And damn it, they're going to use it. So WrestleVotes nails another one. WrestleVotes posted a tweet, got to give him credit, back on November 12, saying there have been internal discussions about moving the scheduled date of WrestleMania from March 28th to April 11th, or possibly April 18th. The goal remains to have fans in attendance for the event. So that is what WrestleVotes reported back in November. I think the two-night WrestleMania worked out well last year. I was on the fence about it. I was not really a big fan. I know it was an experiment for New Japan when they did the first two-night Wrestle Kingdom last year, and it worked out well. And Wrestle Kingdom has traditionally been like WrestleMania in that it's a very long show. I'm able to tolerate it better because I just generally enjoy those shows more than I will enjoy these bloated WrestleMania shows. But 2 nights of WrestleMania, especially the quality of some of the WrestleManias, I wasn't sold on the idea. Given the circumstances, they tried it, and I think it made things a lot more tolerable because instead of having one long 8-hour show because they insist on getting every single person on the card, no matter who they are, now you get to just break it up a little bit. I mean, the shows are still long, but they're tolerable. I'd rather sit and watch a 4-hour show than I would a 7.5 or an 8-hour show. And I say that as somebody who was at a lot of those WrestleManias in person, stuck in that seat for 7 hours. It ain't fun. So I like the fact that they're separating it again. This time, speaking of fans, the bottom of the press release was this little nugget of information. They make it very clear that there will be fans allowed in attendance this year, unlike last year, at WrestleMania. It says, in coordination with local partners and government officials, WWE will announce ticket availability and safety protocols for WrestleMania 37 in the coming weeks. WWE has not had any fans in attendance for their main roster shows. At the COVID Coliseum down there, when they do all the NXT shows, they have a small contingent of people. I don't know if it's just friends and family. I think it is some actual fans that they let in. It's probably about 100 people, 150, somewhere in that range. They've been doing that now for a little while, ever since they moved into the CWC. On the main roster shows, as far as the Raw shows and the SmackDown shows and the pay-per-views, it went from the Performance Center, which was exclusively made up of the PC recruits, and occasionally they would have friends and family that they allowed in. Then, of course, remember there was a COVID outbreak, and so they stopped doing that for a while. Then the Thunderdome pretty much negated the need to have any actual people in the building. You have everybody on virtual screens, and it's a nice visual. It's better than just darkness and empty chairs. But this is not something that WWE has done up to this point. They've not sold tickets for any of their shows. Florida, the governor has lifted pretty much any and all restrictions. You would think that everything was just hunky-dory and there was nothing going on in the world if you lived in Florida. Now, if they wanted to, in theory, they can run a full-capacity arena or a full-capacity stadium if they want. Most people have more common sense than that. NFL, the NBA, I mean, they're not packing in the buildings. But technically, I think if they wanted to in the state of Florida right now, they could do that. They're trying to be more responsible than that, which is good. A lot of these leagues. Now, AEW has been using these pods for a while now, for a lot of their Dynamite shows at Daly's Place. So they have had at some of their shows close to 1,000, and in some cases, upwards of 1,000 people. I think for the Brody Lee tribute show, they may have had more people in the building that night than they've ever had before. Might have been a little over 1,000. That's generally the range that they have kept it to. How many people WWE will allow is going to depend, I think, on how things go in 3 weeks when the Super Bowl comes to Raymond James Stadium. Before WrestleMania gets there in a few months, they're hosting the Super Bowl in that very same stadium. Now, the NFL was planning for a minimum 20% capacity for the big game. It could be more than that. That'll be up to their discretion. The stadium, I know, has had fans in the stands for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers games this season. So WrestleMania will have fans. At this point, we just don't know How many? If I had to venture a guess, each night, I would say you're probably looking at somewhere, it's hard. I was going to say 10 to 15. I could see maybe 15 to 20. Is that combined? Is that each night? I don't know. I mean, Wrestle Kingdom at the Tokyo Dome, and I know things are different in Japan, but they had combined between the two nights 20,000 people. They had 12,000 on one night, 7,000 on the next. Right? So that's part of it is going to depend on how many tickets can you sell. They might want to have 20,000 people in the building both nights and get 40K combined. Maybe they won't be able to find 20,000 people to buy tickets on both nights, right? It remains to be seen. It's been a while since they put tickets on sale. We don't know what the response is going to be. I think there'll be enough people who are dying to go. Well, they may literally be dying to go. So I don't think for them that's going to be an issue. My guess would be you end up with probably 15,000 people in the building on each night, unless they cap it at a lower number. WrestleMania 38 is going to be taking place on Sunday, April 3rd, 2022. So we're back to one night only. Looks like this year may be the final two-night WrestleMania. That would be April 3rd. And this was a surprise in terms of the location. They're headed back to AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas. Just 6 years after bringing WrestleMania 32 to that building, they're coming back. Now, they did set their all-time attendance record that night. They claimed 101,000 fans in the building that night. It is strange, I think, that they would go back so soon after. But then again, it's really not, right? Because Texas has fewer COVID restrictions than California does right now. Because that was my first thought. Why are they pushing the California date back? You would think California is bumped this year. They'll get it next year. At the moment, Texas has far fewer restrictions. I mean, California's in a bad way right now, and you don't know how quickly they will climb out of it. And even if they climb out of it quickly, that doesn't mean that the people who run the government in that state are going to be like, all right, well, hey, we're all open for business, 100% capacity. So maybe WWE was looking at that and going, you know what, to play it safe, let's push back California. And let's go to Texas, where we know that by then we should be able to pack that place in. And what a visual it would be to have the first WrestleMania back in a few years with this massive amount of people shoulder to shoulder in the audience. WrestleMania 39, Sunday, April 2nd, 2023 from SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, which was supposed to play host to this year's WrestleMania, but obviously there's no way California was going to let that happen. And I suspect that, I suspect they thought, well, the same might be said for next year. So let's push this back to 2023. That way we can give California the show that we had promised them. Build this whole big WrestleMania Goes Hollywood, which I was looking forward to. I was hoping they would do something very similar to what they did for WrestleMania 21, where they come up with these very, funny, creative movie trailers or some takeoff. Maybe if they didn't copy exactly what they did back then, some kind of takeoff on that theme, I think would have been a lot of fun. And hopefully they'll still do that when they go back there in a couple of years. But here's also what I think might be going on here, beyond all the COVID stuff. You look at doing a WrestleMania, right, in a big place like AT&T Stadium or a big stadium like SoFi Stadium. What is the big match that WWE would like to do? Because whatever that big match is, whatever that big attraction is, they're going to want people in the building, and they're going to want more than 15,000 people in a giant football stadium. They're going to want to pack the place in for a big mega main event. Well, what is that mega main event that they can do? I mean, a lot can change in the next 2 years, whatever they may have in mind. But is it The Rock against Roman Reigns? Because The Rock has expressed an interest in possibly coming back and working with Roman Reigns. That's not happening this year. In their minds, do they want to potentially save that match if they can get The Rock? I'm not convinced they'll be able to get him. I don't know that he'll be able to. Even if he wants to, I'm not sure he'll be able to. Talk about insurance and contracts and movie schedules, who knows? But that is probably the biggest match they could do. You want to save that match for Texas, or you want to save that match for Hollywood. It's pretty much where Rock is these days anyway, right? Off in Hollywood, biggest star in Hollywood. So that could very well be playing into their thinking on this as well. Now, PW Insider reported this week that this year's Elimination Chamber pay-per-view will now be held on February 21st. That is 1 week earlier than planned. WWE has not officially announced anything regarding the Elimination Chamber, but February 21st is apparently going to be the date of that show. So now we know where 37, 38, and 39 are going to be held. That leaves WrestleMania 40. If you don't feel old just hearing me say that, because I do, we are very close to WrestleMania 40, 2024. That leaves the date and location open for WrestleMania 40, and to me, it's got to be one of three places. They either ditch the stadiums for 1 year, which I don't think they want to do, but they can ditch the stadium for 1 year and you bring WrestleMania back home to where it all began. Madison Square, I'm not talking about, MetLife Stadium in Jersey. I'm talking Madison Square Garden in New York City, which seems very unlikely. I know they skipped MSG for WrestleMania 30. That kind of broke the chain of doing MSG every 10 years or so. So I don't expect that to happen, but I do think, for I don't know, old time's sake, I guess, or just kind of building up this big anniversary WrestleMania. I'm sure they would jack up ticket prices because they wouldn't be able to sell as many. That should be at least considered. But let's say, okay, that's not going to happen. There's only two other locations that I personally am interested in that I would totally be there. Because I was going to every WrestleMania from 28 up until 35. I wasn't even planning on going last year anyway. I have no intention of going back to WrestleMania until they bring it back to one of these two places. If they come to New York, I'm sure I would be there. But if not New York, two of my favorite places, Las Vegas or New Orleans. If they come back to Las Vegas or New Orleans, I'm there. It should be Vegas. I'd be very disappointed, actually, if it's not Las Vegas. They have not had a WrestleMania in Vegas since 1993. And I know all the people in Minneapolis and Vancouver and all these places, even Indianapolis, they haven't had one since 92. They're going to be very upset to hear that. Why does it have to go back to the same place? Vegas is the perfect place to bring WrestleMania. They got a brand new stadium. Technically, it's not even Vegas. It's Paradise, Nevada. Now we're getting into semantics, though. Paradise is what? Probably a 15-minute drive from the Vegas Strip. I don't live in Nevada. I'm sure any Nevadans who are listening to this can clue me in on the geography of how close Paradise is to Vegas. But they got that brand new Raiders Stadium there, Allegiant Stadium. WrestleMania it's got to be coming to Vegas. 40 would be a great one to bring there. But New Orleans is awesome. And the only two times I've ever been to New Orleans have been for WrestleMania. It's WrestleMania 30, which I had the time of my life at Mania that year, and WrestleMania 34. So if they wanted to come back, I guess that would be 6 years too, right? I was talking about why would they go back to Texas after only 6 years. But if they wanted to come back to New Orleans for 40, you'd get no argument out of me. Always had a good time when I was in New Orleans. So we'll see. But WrestleMania 40, man, it's not that far off. It's crazy to think about, but it's not that far off. But that was the big breaking news from last night about WrestleMania.